Welcome in. This is your betting preview for this week's BMW Championship. I'm Rick Gaiman. That right there. Andy Lack. Andy, here we go. Final, realish event of the year, right? We're going to do starting strokes next week. This is 68 of the best players with no cut. This feels like the last gasp before we get to the fall swing.
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, we can debate how we feel about next week from like a betting and DraftKings purpose, but I would say that I think most people probably agree that this is our last real, full-ish, kind of half-ish field event where it feels like it's a real, PGA Tour event. So I'm excited for it. I mean, we can get into the course a little bit, but great field, obviously, and I'm excited to see what these guys do this week.
Yeah, so the odds are interesting when you get to this point in the season. Here's the odds checker grid so you can shop across places. But for the most part, Rory McIlroy is the favorite 11-1. Then everyone else is lumped somewhere between 14 and 20. That's Rahm and JT and Fitzpatrick and Finau and Zalatoris and like everybody, right? So I suspect one of these guys very likely to win. We either have to find the right guy or just avoid the top of the board. This is a lot where card construction comes into play.
Right. I would take a shot. I mean, I feel pretty comfortable saying that one of these guys is going to be the last man standing. For me, it was between Rahm and JT. I ended up going with JT. So we could talk about Rahm first. Okay, we'll do JT.
Let's do JT.
Let's do JT. So here's the thing. I mean, this golf course, it's Wilmington Country Club. We have zero data on it. We've never seen it for PGA Tour competition. But if you go through hole by hole and kind of map this course out, it's a lot like a lot of the other Robert Trent Jones courses that we have seen in the past, whether they be Robert Trent Jones Golf Club, Firestone, Congressional, Bellerive, Baltusrol. And you look at the types of players that have performed the best on those types of courses where there's kind of this common through line where it's asking you these pretty straightforward questions off the tee, right? And it turns into a lot more of a second shot golf course where middle iron play is essential. It's JT. JT answers the bell. Robert Trent Jones heavily, in my opinion, over bunkers his golf courses. These greens are very massive. And so at an extremely elementary level, if you want to say, hey, the three things that are going to matter this week, lag putting, bunker play, and middle iron play, the only player in this field, there's two players. It's Hideki and JT that are the best at those three things. Like I said, it's Hideki and JT. So for me, Justin Thomas would be my pick to win this week.
I want to get there, right? I agree with everything you've said. Does this at all worry you that he has seemingly lost the putter, losing in 4 straight? And that was by far the most improved thing for him this year. And now is it gone? Has he lost the touch? That is enough to worry me, but maybe I should forgive and forget.
No, I think that's a very valid concern with JT. And I think the issue here at the top is these guys are all such great options. I could make a case for every single one of them. You need to find something with every single one of these guys to figure out a way to cross some of them off. And I think your concerns about JT's putter are valid. I mean, have you made a move at the top under 20?
I haven't. Just the way that I kind of construct my card, I kind of started at the 20. I think I got it 28 on Cam Young. But if I were, I think it'd be this guy. I think it'd be Jon Rahm.
Yeah.
Who's just, probably the best driver of the golf ball on the planet, who, gained the most strokes, ball striking last week that he had since Mexico, who's figuring out the short game. And it just feels like it's about to happen for him, right? And he better get moving. If he wants a realistic chance to win the FedEx Cup, he better go out and post something this week, or else he's going to start 7 shots back and have no chance.
He has wasted one of the great driving seasons of all time. I mean, He has been so incredible off the tee this year, and all he's got to show for it is basically like a Korn Ferry Tour win. It's almost like a quarterback that's breaking all of these passing records, but the team goes 4-12, right? It's hard to believe that Rahm is going to finish his year and all it's going to be is a win at the Mexico Open, right? So I think Rahm is dangerous as hell this week. I ended up going with JT as my guy, but I will be heavily invested in Rahm in other markets, whether that be the matchups, which we can talk about. He's a big DraftKings guy for me this week as well. So I'm with you. I think it's Rahm and JT at the top, and there you can make great cases for a bunch of these guys, but those two would be my favorites.
Yeah, the next tier is interesting as well. I know Cam Young is going to try to pull off the community win again. 28-1 is the number that I got him at, but I could make a case for Sung Jae. I could make a case for Victor. I could make a case that in no world should Jordan Spieth be longer than Tom Kim. Like, I just find this to be a fascinating section of the board.
Yeah, listen, I mean, I like your guy Victor a lot this week, and I've kind of been saying this a lot, but Hovland has provided some kind of cover for some of these other guys like a Morikawa that have been struggling around the greens just as much. For me in this range, it's Hovland and Morikawa were the two guys that I was the most interested in that like 20 to 35 range. I think both are great options. You want to talk about two players that Hovland, it's interesting with him, if you dig into it, he's not even, obviously you want Hovland on a course where he has a long iron in his hands a lot, just like a John Rahm or Will Zalatoris, but Hovland's a great short iron player too. He's a great wedge player. Obviously he's a great driver of the ball. And he showed me enough last week, right? Like again, lost a couple around the green. He's actually been putting pretty well too recently, and the irons are
putting well, and he's getting more consistent. It's not as the ball striking metrics aren't as eye popping as we saw earlier in the year, but he's starting to get more consistent. I know that these are not even a fraction of the size of the greens at like the old course, but hey, get 8,100 square feet. You hit a couple more greens a week. It takes chipping out of the play for a couple more holes, and hey, maybe Victor Hovland finds a way to the top of the leaderboard.
Right. I mean, would you go Hovland over, or would you go Cam Young over Hovland here?
If I had to choose one, probably. I mean, Young gained 9 strokes ball striking last week, and that's not even an outlier for him. He's done it 4 times in his last 8 starts. And I'm shocked at how bad he is on bent, but I only have 16 measured rounds for him on bent, and he's generally a very good putter, and he punted away, I think, 5.5 strokes last week. So I think if I just removed the names and looked at the stat profiles, I would have bet Young almost every time over Victor.
That's fair. I want to ask you one more quick question about Jordan Spieth. I think there's 2 ways that you can look at Jordan Spieth this week. Way number 1 is you can say, eye test wise, this guy looked terrible last week. He was doing, I don't know if you caught some of him. I caught him on featured groups on I think it was Friday morning. The rehearsal was back in full force. And it was actually even, maybe it was because we haven't seen it in a couple of weeks, but it felt even more jarring than usual. But you could also say the counter argument to that is look at what his stats were at the Masters. Very eerily similar to what they were last week at the FedEx St. Jude's. And what did he do the week after the Masters? He won the Heritage, right? So are you kind of in the camp as, no, I'm going to trust what my eyes are telling me, there's something completely off with Jordan Spieth this week? Or do you feel like there's kind of a really interesting buy low opportunity with him?
More so the latter. I think that he's proven, from week to week, you don't necessarily know what you're going to get, but over the long haul, he is an absolute high ceiling golfer that should benefit from wider fairways. I worry that he 3-putts like 9 times this week, but outside of that, right? I think anytime, and we kind of saw this a little bit with Morikawa last week, right? It's like the number's just too big. It's just too big for a guy who is 40-1 in some places, that if he gets in the mix on the weekend, you're like, okay, he might just Jordan Spieth this thing.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. And I think like for my betting card, I wasn't able to get there. But I think he's a very intriguing option for DraftKings. I've seen you moving down the board a little bit.
Yeah.
Like for me, there's like a cutoff with like Aaron Wise and Hideki, in my opinion. Like, I don't think I would go lower than those guys. Would you?
Probably not. So I love Cam Davis. I think Taylor Pendrith is very interesting. I think JT Poston's being overlooked, but are they actually going to win the golf tournament when all of these guys get together? That's the question. And the answer is probably not. So I actually kind of drew the line at like Terrell Hatton, 55 to 1. Again, probably benefits from a little bit wider fairways. He's been playing well recently. Like that's kind of where I drew the line. But if you want to go to one more spot down to Aaron Wise, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I know. I listen, Wise is a guy that you and I have talked about a lot, pretty much all year. And I don't think that he's had the season that we were probably hoping for or expecting, but he hasn't been bad either, right? All of the signs are still there. I mean, look at what he did from a ball striking standpoint last week. And you want to talk about a player that seemingly tends to do some of his best work on tree line bentgrass courses. I'm looking at that second at Memorial. I'm looking at a sixth at Firestone in his only appearance. He's the type of guy that could maybe, looking at who's won the BMW Championship in the past, it's a lot of guys at the top, but you also have that occasional Mark Leishman, Keegan Bradley. To me, he would be the best candidate to fill that Leishman Bradley role this week.
Yeah, he's had a great year, just didn't win, which is what I was hoping for at some point. These are the types of guys, though, that you can get access to in other markets. Matchup markets, particularly here's Bet365. Got the matchups here at DraftKings. You mentioned access to like a John Rahm in matchup markets, right? Let's see who they've got. They've got Rahm minus 120 against Justin Thomas. That's, of course, the two guys that we've been debating. Bet365 has the same thing. John Rahm minus 120 over Justin Thomas.
I was going to write this. I think it's on FanDuel. There's a Rahm Cantlay out there that I really like. And there's a Rahm Fitzpatrick out there that I really like. They have a little more juice. Like, I think it's Rahm minus 125 or minus 130 against Fitzpatrick, and same thing with Cantlay. But I think that's a good way to get down on Rahm this week for sure.
Yeah, it's, I stared long and hard at his outright number.
That's so funny that Cantlay is checking all those boxes. In
Dominator. He's a dom. I mean, he's been so good recently. That's the thing.
He's like the ideal matchup guy, Cantlay. So it makes sense. He's so damn consistent.
Yeah, he does. He just constantly gains strokes to the field, gains at least one, gains at least two. How about a couple of these other ones here? This whole Tom Kim, Jordan Spieth debate. Okay, so from an outright perspective, I think Jordan Spieth wins this event more often than Tom Kim wins it. But when I see Tom Kim in a matchup against Jordan Spieth, I'm like honestly kind of intrigued about the Tom Kim side of it.
Look at Tom Kim, didn't he gain like another 5, 6, 7 strokes ball striking last week?
Insane. He gained 8.
Oh my goodness. And like, it just seems like I've started to notice this more this year where it seems to me like once these guys get rolling, it seems like you kind of just got to ride them until the wheels fall off. And I didn't play Tom Kim last week because I felt like the price was increasing on me and I had kind of missed it after the Wyndham, and he's played like 6, 7 weeks in a row and the price is up there again this week. He's $9K in DraftKings, but like, I mean, the guy's 20 years old, right? And he has this like just kind of happy to be here mentality that I think is going to last all the way through Eastlake. So yeah, on a matchup with Jordan Spieth, give me the Tom Kim side 7 days out of 7.
DraftKings also has him up against who did I just scroll? Oh, Terrell Hatton. The other one here I think is interesting, and I want to get your thoughts because this is kind of very much golf course related. Cam Young and Corey Connors. Cam Young minus 120 to Corey Connors. I love Corey Connors, and he's generally pretty good in matchups because he's going to finish like T18 every single week. But I don't think his strengths are particularly magnified here at Wilmington Country Club, while I think on paper Cam Young's could be. What are your thoughts on that?
Right. I generally tend to agree with you. I think that let's look at a course like Detroit Golf Club. And I don't that Cam Young has had so much success. And I don't think that if I had to make a guess, I think Wilmington's going to play harder than Detroit Golf Club. It's a little bit of a longer golf course. It has one less par 5, but let's look at the way that Cam Young was able to experience so much success at Detroit Golf Club. He pulled driver a ton. And what you get out of this bluegrass rough is that it's a lot easier to control spin out of bluegrass rough, especially when you're approaching these massive 8,100 square foot greens. So I expect us to see a lot of drivers this week. I think players are going to pull driver a lot, which they always tend to do on Robert Trent Jones golf courses like a Firestone, even with narrow fairways, right? Because you can kind of get those wedges out of the thick rough to these larger greens. So I agree. I think we're going to see a very similar strategy off the tee that Cam Young was able to use to find success at Detroit Golf Club. And Corey Connors, you probably want him more so on a course where there is a massive premium on hitting the fairway. And I'm not sure I'm seeing that this week.
Fair enough. Okay. Well, let's continue to roll on here. We've got to do props. We've got to chat about one and done. But first, we are going to hear about Andy's podcast. Andy Lack is not only the co-host of The Scramble, but also produces his own show, the Inside Golf Podcast. It's available twice a week, focusing on course breakdowns, DFS, and betting strategies for every PGA Tour event. Admittedly, I was drawn to Andy for his data-driven approach, which you'll find on his Sunday shows as he breaks down the field. But I'm even more impressed by his passion for course architecture, which offers a different perspective of our great game. Mix those together with insightful and humorous guests who don't take themselves too seriously, and you've got a recipe for a great podcast. Follow Inside Golf Pod on Twitter and download Inside Golf wherever you download podcasts. Okay, Andy, here are the props via PrizePicks. They've got birdies or better, matchups, and strokes available. Let's start with strokes. It's a par 71. We're doing a lot of speculating and trying to get reconnaissance from the ground about the South Course at Wilmington Country Club. It's got the 4-inch rough, but of course, we know, as you mentioned, a little bit easier, a little more predictable results from said rough. So you'll see the big boys here are sitting at 68 for round one scores. I could probably be convinced to go under on a couple of these guys, but I think I'd prefer to find the hook on like Matt Fitzpatrick, 68.5, take the under. Even like Tom Kim, 68.5, take the under. Those Sung J M, same thing, 68.5. Those are the three most attractive to me. What are your thoughts on how these lines have been set for round one?
I'm with you. If I'm leaning one direction, it's the under, especially because the course has gotten some rain. And if it's going to play tougher, it's probably going to play tougher over Saturday and Sunday, right? We generally see the course tends to firm up. We get closer to finishing time, and that's when we start seeing players go backwards with the added pressure. I like the Sung Jae under 68.5. I mean, I don't see any particular reason to stop riding Sung Jae right now. He had back-to-back runner-up finishes, and I guess the 12th place finish last week was a little bit of a letdown for that, but he still played absolutely great golf. I was struggling to find how I wanted to get down on Sung Jae because I think he's going to carry a lot of DraftKings ownership, and I couldn't get there with the outright number. I love that Sung Jae under 68.5. Hideki's an interesting one to me too, because he's coming off these back-to-back withdrawals, but you look at the course fit, and this is a guy that's won at Firestone. He's been so good. I think he's got top 10 finishes at both Baltusrol and Bellerive, the two PGA Championship venues in the last couple of years that were designed by Robert Trent Jones. And, you look at what he does coming off a WD, and it's a 14th at the Masters and a 4th at the Olympics. Sung Jae and Hideki are probably the two most interesting ones for me. I feel like Hideki, with the withdraw stuff, I don't know how much I want to read into that.
Hideki's just like the ultimate X factor this week. You can find like a 60-1. He's probably going to come in very low owned. You can probably get some pretty good, exposure to him in other places, but I have zero idea. His range of outcomes is literally win or WD. Playing two shots, right? Like it's really bizarre. So I think picking and choosing where you can get access to him is the way to do it.
Right. And if I put that PrizePicks pick in now and
Yeah.
he WDs before Thursday, it's a push. But if he starts playing, we're out. It's a
Right.
loss.
Right.
Okay.
Correct.
Yeah.
So
I don't think he's going to withdraw this week. I would be very surprised.
the other one, just want to give a shout out to JT Poston. So he's sitting at 69. Under 69 is I mean, that's 2 under essentially. And he's been phenomenal. Okay. And also, I think I used to have, and I've gotten into this mold with a couple of other guys where like I just get stuck on what I think the golfer is. Like I just, for the longest time, was like, oh, Shane Lowry is just this short game specialist. And he's not. I mean, he's just turned into like a great ball striker. JT Poston is not a short hitter, right? Like he is like basically tour average over like the last 50 rounds off the tee. When I think of him as more like a dink and dunk kind of guy, and he's just so well rounded and playing great that I'm excited to see how he plays in this field.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these guys, like Jordan Spieth is not a short hitter. Colin Morikawa is not a short hitter, but when you stack them up against Cam Young and John Rahm, they feel short. But like, yeah, I agree with you. JT Poston, he's no Kevin Kisner or Brian Harmon. I don't think this golf course is going to be over imposing. Like, I do not think that this is I think distance is an advantage here, certainly, but I do not think that any player is too short here to compete. And Poston is a microwave, man. When he gets hot, I mean, he's usually able to sustain it for a couple weeks, and he's kind of in the midst of a really great run right now, and I don't really see many signs of him slowing down either.
Yeah, even Poston will have 9 holes where he is driver 9-iron or something like that, driver wedge into
I
them.
agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
One and done. I mean, this is probably the finale for most people. So I'm hoping at this point there is not a whole lot of strategy to be had, Andy, because if you are really pondering what to do this week, you've probably played your last couple of weeks wrong, right? You probably should have had an idea at least a couple of weeks ago what your final plays were going to be, but it is kind of interesting to finish the season at a golf course we've never seen before, finish the one and done season on a golf course that we've never seen. So you're probably just playing best available, right? Just best available.
Right. I'm out of it. I had it in the bigger one and done, the fantasy golf championships one. I needed a win or a top 5, I think, and I went with Hovland, and it didn't end up being enough. But yeah, actually, I want to give a shout out to, and this is a Rick Run Good member and Discord guy. This guy, Brett Campbell, is number 1 in the big, he is number 1 in the big fantasy golf championship 5,000 person race. And he sent me,
which is 50K to first,
which is 50K to first.
Yeah.
And he sent me a message in our Slack channel asking, and I want to get your take on it too. I have my opinion, but we got a lot at stake for my guy, Brett. He has Neiman, Tom Kim, Connors, Hatton, and Homa available.
Oof. But he's in the lead, so he's front running.
He's in the lead. Yep, he's in the lead, and he's 2.5 million in front of second place. So he basically just needs a solid finish to lock up his position.
I mean, he could lock this up. If he gets $200,000, he wins the whole thing.
100%. Right.
Yeah. I would play Tom Kim.
I gave Neiman because I liked what Neiman gave like 7 strokes ball striking last week.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think with Hatton's the type of guy you worry about finishing like T65.
For sure. Yeah.
Right. I feel
Homa I love, but has significantly cooled off the last couple of months.
Right. I think Connors, it's always in play. He loses 6 strokes putting.
Yeah.
It's Neiman or Tom Kim are the answer, in my opinion.
I tend to agree with that. Yeah. And honestly, I don't want to like jinx the guy, but I don't believe it. Like he probably can't go wrong here, right? Like the outcome is the guy in second pulls the winner, which is pretty unlikely in itself. And he does not earn like $200,000. That's the path that, like, what are his chances of winning this thing? I think they're like 89%.
I don't want to do any announcing jinx with this
let's
guy,
let's
but
really
we don't.
just twist the knife on Brett here.
But we don't even know who the guy in second place has, right? A lot of people probably at this point in the season have used a lot of their top guys, right? So I mean, if I had to make a guess, the player pool of Neiman, Tom Kim, Corey Connors, Hatton, Homa, like that's probably what most people are looking at this. You might have Cam Young, probably, I think I think, although a lot of
Reasonable.
people I think used him at the Rocket Mortgage, but you might have Cam Young. But yeah, I mean, at this stage of the game, it's very doubtful. I don't even think it's good. If you have like Rory and Zalatoris and Xander left, I think you played it wrong.
I agree. Also, look at this outcome. So he's at $18 million with only 3 wins. Now his 3 wins were Zalatoris at 2.7, Cam Smith 2.5, and JT at 2.7, but he just piled top 5s all year long. 15 compared to the guy in second who had 8 of them. He missed one more cut than the guy in second. He just piled top 5s all year long.
That's what you need, right? It's like once you get to like a T27 and a T45, no real difference. But if you're stacking top 5s instead of T18s, you don't need to win a ton. I asked him too. I said, what did your season look like for you to get to that position? And he was like, I was expecting him to say I won 5-6 times. And you don't necessarily need to. It's a game at top 5. So yeah, hats off to him.
Good luck, Brett. I've tried to jinx you a couple times. I hope you bring it home and bring home the 50K. Congrats already. Okay, for us, I'll have to update the spreadsheet. I'm like a week behind, but I'm rolling Tom Kim here.
Okay, yeah, final week for us just for bookkeeping purposes. Cam Young for me. Good season. I had like a B- version of what Brett did, where I've
Correct.
made 29 of 32 cuts with 20 top 25s, 11 top 10s, 0 wins. So I'll roll out Cam Young here. And next year we're putting our own money down for this, Rick.
Yep.
Between you and I, and we'll have to figure out it when we're starting it. But
we'll also let's do like I don't know if it'll be like this 2-week off season or the longer off season. I want to dive into there's a lot of one and done strategy to be squeezed out of this, and like analyzing paths to the top and courses and guys that are coming in with 0 weeks of play versus 3. Like there's a lot that can be squeezed out of one and done strategy. And if these things are only going to get bigger and bigger and bigger, like I want to be a part of it.
I think one and done appeals to a lot of non-golf nuts, right? It's a very small commitment in terms of what you have to do from week to week, right? So I've noticed that I think it's a rising game in terms of the interest that's going to continue to garner. So yeah, absolutely. I need to get better at it myself, to be honest with you.
All right. Andy Lack available on Twitter at ADP Lack Sports. Go use the code Rick over at PrizePicks. Get yourself 100% instant deposit match. Use the link in the description. Sign up for RickRunGood.com. You get access to Andy's articles, which are always a blast. And you can find me on Twitter at RickRunGood. Best of luck this week. Talk soon.